We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Conversation. Where would you like to do it? Is this about the Hershey meeting yesterday? Because I can explain. Well, unfortunately, that meeting and most of your questionable behavior is beyond explanation. Should I sit down? Yes. I'm not going to defend myself. I've tolerated plenty from every one of you.
Don, there's no need for defense. This isn't a trial. The verdict has been reached.
So what time did this meeting start? We think it's best for you and the firm if you take some time off and regroup. How much time? A few months? But the holidays are coming. That will take up most of it. Did you tell Ted? Because he can't go to California if there's no one here to run New York.
Ted feels confident he can oversee Peggy from LA. He knows it's temporary.
I want a return date.
We can't give you that.
You all agree with this? Try and see it from our side.
Good morning. Hello, Don.
You're early.
Sorry about that, old chum. This is Lou Avery from Dancer Fitzgerald.
We met.
Going down?
And that was the final scene from last night's season finale. Actually, it wasn't the final scene. It was the second to final scene in last night's season finale of Mad Men. But it's the scene that sets everything in motion for next season as Don Draper, the man everybody loves to hate and hates to love, is now re-examining his life. And in many ways, Don Draper is now dead because he is no longer having a relationship with the ad agency that fostered his identity. What lies beneath Don Draper is Dick Whitman. In the final scene of Mad Men in this episode, 613, Don takes his daughter, Sally, and his two sons to the house that he grew up in and it's in a pretty bad neighborhood, and the house itself was a whorehouse, and he's now beginning to reveal pieces of himself as Dick Whitman and not Don Draper. It's a very pivotal moment in the show as he leaves the firm that has helped build his identity and fortune and persona, and is also leading to his ultimate destruction. What's interesting about this show and this episode, and I'm gonna build this up so you guys understand why I'm talking about this. This is just not a kind of a random passion that I have, but there is some significance to this. The reason why it's important is that we are going into Jupiter in Cancer astrologically, and this is a very significant transition from Jupiter in Gemini, which has been frenetic and chaotic and maddening and strange, into something that is going to demand deeper values and deeper commitment to our emotional well-being, our emotional core, and our souls, to be quite honest with you. And what's interesting here is that in a very fascinating stroke of astro-synchronicity, what do we have? We have Don Draper dying. So Don Draper, a.k.a. Dick Whitman, is two people, correct? And what does the dual identity represent? It represents Gemini. And what's happening now is Don Draper is dying. And he's returning to his roots, the place that he was born. He was born in a whorehouse. He's going home. And what does home represent? It represents Cancer. So this show is actually exquisitely timed with the transition from Jupiter in Gemini to Jupiter in Cancer. And what's also fascinating about this last episode is that the whole theme of family is very present. And in fact, it's coming out of I believe this episode is taking place right around the 23rd, 24th of November, because it's Thanksgiving. It's 1968. And at that point, we've just gone through Scorpio in the zodiac and coming into Sagittarius, although some people might say we were in Ophiuchus, but it's moved into Sagittarius, which is the time of truth-telling. But the characters are going through deaths in their own way. The death of Don Draper is just one example of a specific or particular kind of death. There's also a death taking place with Pete Campbell and his mother, and his relationship to his mother and his relationship to the agency itself. Pete Campbell is going to California. So there's a death there as well. There's the death of Pete Campbell and his identity. And there's also the death of Ted, Don's rival, and his New York persona, moving to California to be away from the erotic Peggy. Peggy showed up in Cleavage last night. She was pretty smoking, wasn't she? So there's a death theme, but there's also a transcendence theme, and there's a truth theme, because this is what all three characters, Ted and Don and Pete, come to in their own way, their own personal truth, no matter how awkward it seems, which coincides and resonates with Thanksgiving. However, what's also interesting about Thanksgiving, and as a backdrop to this episode, is that it represents families. And we see Don reuniting with his children. We see Roger reuniting with his son, and Joan and the strange family she's concocting with her mother and Bob Benson. We see Pete even briefly reuniting with his ever-patient ex-wife and their daughter. So there's, again, the ramping up of this concept of family and the whole notion and idea of family, which is concurrent with Jupiter in Cancer, which is coming in our direction. So there couldn't have been a better time for this episode to occur. And on a symbolic level, it also is a harbinger for what's to come for the rest of us. Now, I think one of the things that happens is that we get really hung up or have our heads wrapped around the big event in life. And there are plenty of big events. What's happening with Edward Snowden is a big event. It's a major distraction, and I'm going to talk about that. It's a major distraction, but it's still a big event. But we get so wrapped up around the big event, the one thing that is going to turn our lives in a direction that is going to be fulfilling, if not profound. Now, that one thing could be anything from the lottery to enlightenment to some kind of meta-catharsis, the moment of clarity, the epiphany, whatever that thing is. And I feel like we've all been searching for that one thing for like the last 20, 25 years. And in fact, in many ways, the New Age is built on that one thing, the one event that turns everything around, whether it's in the moments or whether it's in the months and the years ahead. We're all hooked on that one big thing where the tumblers click and all of a sudden life unlocks its mystery to us. But Jupiter in Cancer isn't really like that. It's not going to be one big thing. It's not as if manna from heaven and Mother Mary will open her breast to us and we'll all be doused in wonderful and divine milk. Although that may occur, but it won't occur simultaneously for everybody all at one time. But what's going to happen with Jupiter in Cancer is hundreds of millions of little things on a very personal level where we step back and we say, this matters to us, or this matters to me in that moment. And we begin to make choices that are emotionally resonant with who we are and what we invest in or what we feel is something that's really appropriate, not only for us, but for other people. And it's not one big thing, but it's an aggregation of hundreds of millions of little things that come together, because the ocean itself is one big thing, but it's made up of trillions and trillions and trillions of little things that comprise the whole. And this is what we're looking at with Jupiter in Cancer. It's going to be the acts and the thoughts of the hearts and the minds of people who begin to peel back the layers and the resonance and make choices as a result of that. Because we also have to understand that Jupiter in Cancer is a cardinal sign, and that cardinality means action. And although the crab moves sideways and backwards, the crab does indeed move forwards as well. And it's a cardinal sign, so you may as well take advantage of it when the moment comes. Timing is very important with Jupiter in Cancer, and understanding when to move, when not to move, when to move sideways, when to stick your claws out. These are all very important aspects to what we're going to be going through. So going deeper into your own capacity to understand the rhythms of the moment is going to be part of what we're experiencing as well. So as we look at Mad Men, the season finale, there's a return to values, family values on some level, and there's the death. There's the death of duality. Don Draper is dying. Dick Whitman will be reborn. And who knows what happens as a result of that. But it's significant. It's very significant. One of the things that I wanted to talk about on this show, as well as the significance of Mad Men, is the state of the current military-industrial complex. And I have to make a transition here, because I can't just drop talking about Mad Men and go into something else. But one of the things that this country has based itself on is the ability to defend itself. Let me repeat that word, defend itself. Defend is the word. Astrologers may not agree upon the actual birth chart of the United States in terms of the rising. And they may not even agree on the actual birth chart of the day of the United States for the chart itself. However, I'm going to go on record, and I've said it before, I believe that the country's birthday is July 4th, and I do ascribe to the Sibley chart. Other people don't. The reason I do is because of the ascendant in Sagittarius and the relationship to the horse and sports and religion in this country, and the rise of the university system, which is unrivaled in any other country in the world. And Sagittarius rules law, philosophy, religion, and of course universities. We've also prided ourselves as being people that value animals and animal rights, so therefore Sagittarius on the ascendant also makes sense. So that's my pitch for the Sibley chart. However, the sun of the United States is in the sign of Cancer. And again, if we use the metaphor of the crab to understand what that means for the country and what it means for defense, what does a crab do? Well, a crab does not go out and attack the world, because that would make it a mutant crab, something akin to Godzilla. You know, one of those mutant crabs, those giant radiated crabs. I think Godzilla actually fought one. I think it might have been a crab or a lobster. There's a scene in one of the Godzilla films where he's playing baseball, I think, with a crab in the Pacific Ocean. It's kind of fascinating. But anyway, crabs don't go out and attack. What crabs do is they defend. They will stick their claws out and they will make sure that they can protect their little territory. But they don't go out into the world and dismantle cultures or place rulers into the seats of power in other countries. They don't do that. Crabs don't do that. They just don't. But they do defend. If push came to shove, you wouldn't want to get into a tussle with an angry crab that was trying to defend its turf. But unfortunately, we've gotten into the business of hegemony. And that has to do with the military-industrial complex, which is a very complex thing to talk about. It's a huge business. It's enormous. Absolutely enormous. The amount of money that gets spent on defense and everything related to it each year is mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling. There are companies, there are sub-companies, there's lobbyists. You name it, there's a whole industry supporting the industry itself. And so we have layers and layers and layers of lives and jobs that depend upon not just defending the country. No, not anymore. It's about going out and creating a stake in places like Afghanistan and Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, wherever it is now, wherever democracy is at risk, or where there is a leader that is theoretically despotic, it is now public policy to go in and to make some sort of preemptive change. This started during the Bush administration. The Obama administration has continued it under the guise of democracy, radical democracy, as a compassionate act. This is where we are now, and as a result of which the military-industrial complex still thrives. Now, beneath all of the philosophical and moral justification for all of this to occur is not just the ability to develop new weapons and support systems for every facet of the military, but there's also this notion that besides people and besides governments and besides hegemony, there are resources on the planet that need to be tapped into, and there are other countries who operate as corporations just like the United States that do the exact same thing. So we are in a resource war, and how do you acquire resources? You do it on the ground, not by the air. The air will stabilize or destabilize situations depending on what you want to do, but it's on the ground where the action takes place. And once the military goes in, and right behind the military are the corporations that want to mine everything from coltan to natural gas to shale to you name it. And that's where we are right now. We are in a resource war and tapping this planet for whatever new technologies come our way and emerge. So this is what it's come down to. Hegemony, resources, corporatization. And we need excuses. We need reasons why we have to keep this up and go to war. So we have a war on terror, That's what it's about. Now, everybody is now a potential suspect in the war on terror, whether you're from Yemen or Libya or Wyoming or Texas or Costa Rica. We're all suspects now. And this is the ultimate war, isn't it? Because it's the war without end. How do you end the war on terror? The war on terror is ended when they say it's ended. That's what happens. But in the meantime, people have to submit on some level to participate in this ongoing theater. And how does that occur? Well, they sign up to be part of the military. That's what happens. Now, the motivation for signing up to be part of the military is manifold. There's a lot of reasons why. For some people, it's a way out of a really terrible situation. They're living in a one-horse town. They have no prospects. What are they going to do? Towns are drying up. There's no more manufacturing here in this country, is there? 98% of the textile goods that are made outside of the United States. Think about that for a moment. 98%. There's only 2% of the textile goods that we buy in a store that are made right here in this country. It's all outsourced. And that's just one industry. There's plenty of other industries. Where did the steel industry go? Gone, 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 gone. It's all made elsewhere. Everything has been taken out of the country. And so we've been turned into listless couch potatoes who are just really hooked and indoctrinated on consumption because production is no longer a part of our lexicon. And when that happens, people need to survive. They need to do something. They need to have lives. Not everybody can go to UC Berkeley and get a master's of science in computer science and technology with a minor in internet marketing. You can't do that and then wind up on the steps of Google. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody's smart enough. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. And even if you were, not everybody's motivated to somehow get you to take your hand and move it across your cursor and the cursor onto the screen and then to click yes or submit to something. Not everybody's motivated towards that end. So what happens? Well, there are people out there that just don't know what to do. And there's the Army, and there's the Navy, and there's the Air Force, and there's the Marines, and they're waiting. They're just waiting for those people because they have no future. Well, that's one reason why they join. There's another reason. There are people that just cannot deal with society. They can't. And so they need to have things done for them, decisions made for them, meals made for them, clothes provided for them. It's easy that way. All you have to do is follow orders. But that gets pretty scary at some point because the orders get more and more complex and potentially even more perverse. And then all of a sudden, you've signed up for something that you really didn't think you signed up for. You went to protect the country and have your 3 squares a day prepared for you, and the next thing you know, you're coming back with your head, your brain scrambled like eggs. And there's another reason why people join. Some people join because they want to be thought of as heroes. They want to walk down the street in the uniform and they want somebody to look at them and say, thank you for all that you do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You hear it all the time in sporting events. We'd like to thank our military. We'd like to thank our military for serving and protecting our freedoms. For serving and protecting us from a massive NSA scandal, surveillance, and you name it. That's what they're protecting, question mark. But that's what they love. They want to be seen as somebody important, somebody special, somebody who is sacrificing their lives for yours and mine. And don't kid yourself, there are people that get off on it. I think it's the same reason why some people become police officers. And then there are people that are truly motivated by a national conscience, that they want to serve, that they truly believe in this country, that their heart and mind and body and soul are connected to everything that this country stands about in its best manifestations. That's another reason why people do join. And I'm not ruling that out. I'm not so cynical as to think that those people don't exist. And their motivations and intentions, I'm going to say, are fairly pure. The last reason why people join the military, actually there's 2 more, but the second to last reason why is because it's a legacy. Their fathers, joined the military. Their father's father joined the military, in which case these guys are usually in officer programs, right? They're not grunts. They're not there on the front lines. They're going to ascend fairly quickly. And then the last, ultimately, is that there's some kind of advantage. That if they go through the military, they can go to school, they can get training, and then when they come out, they can apply that training towards some other occupation in life. Those are the reasons why people join the military. Now, what's going to happen is that I believe that with Jupiter and Cancer, two things are going to take place. One is that we're going to have some kind of rectification of the social conscience, which means that there will be people that will be questioning what the military is all about and what it's doing and why it's doing what it's doing. Because crabs don't attack things. Crabs defend things. And the United States is a crab country. We love crab. I love crab. Especially those blue crabs from Maryland. Those yummy soft-shell blue crabs. So that's one thing that's going to happen over the course of the next 15 to 16 months. You're going to see people really begin to go deep into why we do what we do, why we fight. Who are we fighting for? Who are we fighting against? The other thing that we'll see also is we will see an outgrowth and an outburst of patriotic fervor with Jupiter and Cancer, which means there may be more of a call towards the military at the same time. So we might be seeing two realities simultaneously, a raising up and a shutting down. So either way, it's going to be interesting. The whole notion of who we are, what we're doing, and why we are theoretically protecting and or trying to supplant someone in some region of the world in order for those people to experience the fruits of democracy will come into question over the course of the next 14 to 15 months. Because I believe that there are people, and they are growing in number, who have said enough is enough. And in a few moments, I'm going to read you something. I'm going to read you a letter from a man who took his own life. He was a former Army, a member of the U.S. Army, 3 terms, I believe, in Iraq. It might have been 4, but 3, I think, at the minimum. I'm going to read you this letter, and it's going to break your heart. And it's going to get to the core of what we're talking about here today. And this is a madman that came to his senses, and unfortunately, perhaps too late. All right, let me do this. Let me play a little bit of music, and then let's get into this letter I'm about to read you. What do I want to play today? Oh, man. How about a little last play now? Nah, it's too long. Why don't we do, let's do this. I'm going to play this. I haven't played this in a while. It gets a little red flag from YouTube. But let's play. This is Magma, 3 minutes and 50 seconds of some interesting electronic music. I'll be back. I'm going to read you this letter. You don't want to miss it. It's going to change your life. You're listening to the Monday Mashup. I'm Robert Phoenix. Thank you for listening to me, and I'll see you in 3 minutes and 50 seconds.
in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.